투구를 시지 라블레를 시. 잡으면 이제 투구 시지. Yeah. It's a firm. Still soft.
You want something harder?
Yeah, I think harder. Yeah, that's fine. This is good. Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah, this is good. Yeah.
That's slow.
Yeah.
It's that's slow. It's 7 o'clock.
Yeah, we can start.
So begin with the Heart Sutra in English on page 2. Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Ultra Big Mountain, a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound reflection of wisdom, saw the 5 skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of a lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The 5 skandhas should be seen clearly in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomenon. There is no quality of sight, and so on, until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on, up to no old age and death, and no exhaustion of old age and death. The same way there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path. There is no attainment. Bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All those who dwell in the 3 times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom, and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhi soha. Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, noble Avalokiteshvara, that he had spoken well. Well done, son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Metodunga jizebe, razo gula peche tate, yela chuchu yangdeso, rada chedo nimoni, leje jodon rozeche, mare meze duna nyugo, jene junze rajena, dene daje saju daso, yede luzo jase kebyo, chata juna juni, meze jame yanando, pasanadi, o arabasanadi, o arabasanadi. Chero vedeche, talo demu maparasani, kana dimju lo tobayi, bobe nawate dos.
Continue the short mandala on page 16. Saji Kuti
Oye mendo na rira liye nide jemane, sanje jingo mende boye, roge nanda jina chebaye.
Jesun Mama
Amba jena je, chego kala chenze tete, cheta kambe duje zemala, zanje juje chaba toso. Rana mendala gande atayami.
Continue with the register on page 22. Sanje Chodam
Saje chanala, janjo bardo dani jasoji. Dagi chuche jebe sonamji, rala benjire sanje ruparayo.
Sanje
Chwedan soje junala, janjo bardo dani jasoji. Dagi chuche jebe sonamji, rala benjire sanje ruparayo.
Sanje
Chwedan soje junala, janjo bardo dani jasoji. Dagi chuchi jibe sonanji, rala benjire sanje rupa. Nyanda unzo shonge tsangde dagi ludan mo jona gewa deson jebana sije kona tamana deson tabo pewa was ta degi tolle de dakase ndeshe ya kai jumbo yore jasan deson 어디 시제구나 나왔다 대순 다바 배워서 다간다 소소게 다 상태래 되는다 또 네트디 가서는 소소를 여대하게 뢰다 소소를 원대하게 논jö다 소소를 원대하게 아니 저래 소소게 사베 게자 대손데 아니 세제 탐제라 아니 땅고래 아니 대 송래 다바지가 뼈바지가 다바나 나주 düna sosogi lödaro jögeza sonde ene sejera tamada te sonda te tabada te 뼈바지가 resne ta tene kunde liu tambo da juji no de tere 제가 tene shonjina te katole de yo.
So we're on the fourth verse still, giving over to all sentient beings, your body, your positions, and your good gain in the past, present, and future, and protecting, purifying, and enhancing this. So this we discussed on this verse a couple of times, and all the positions and including one's body and the merits that one have gained in the 3 times and that all this should be protected, purified, and should be enhanced.
저한테들이 땅을 소만 타고 빼와 시그마니 땅을 세야 되더래 만 주노제 더 지금 요새 저기 했어.
So today we will focus on discussing giving away, of what is meant by giving away, such as one's position and so on.
땅을 세야 너무 멀리야. 류 땅을 세야 돼. 소소 류 시안 땅을 세야 돼. 다 좋은 데가 짐바 아니면 짐바 땅을 세야 돼. 시고요. 그래서 류 땅을 먼저 계산 땅을 어두서를 제가 류 시안 땅을 해서 그러다. 류 시안 땅도 선보 다른 땅들라 중요해서 류 땅에 제당 소소하게 류에 랑니 땅야 그래 어떻게 동생 배워서 다는 중요라 소지나 무슨 라니에게 류에 시안을 땅와 안 동생 배워서 제가 니요래 되네 제가 래도 다 류 땅세데 류 용도 땅 봐요 거래 되는 류 제라받지 나요 거래 앞에나 타지 바다야 키마지 바다야 안에 소소 문지 바다야 강바다라 바지 바다 다야들의 용도 어쩌다 키마지 바다와 있네 류지 바다마래 키마데 류 제라지 차대고 요래 류다나 류 용도 땅 부분이 바뀌어요 말에 제가 류 제라지 땅에 류 땅 쓰고 요래 대나지게 문지 바다에 요래 제가 문지 바다와 있네 류 땅 쓰고 요래 다들 무슨 땅이 있나? 아니 키만 무슨 시야야 땅 보여래 무슨 시야 땅 보여래 안 두고 보여래 다들 무슨 땅 맞도 있나요? 전다 땅 보니 걸려 땅 그냥 라서 내가 땅 두어 주고 뭐도 하다고 본리데 다땅 두던 뭐도 해야 되는 거죠 세를 안에 들어와 또 세벌 안에 들어와 명아 예송나 세를 안에 들어와 세되게 타주로 중소나 명안일 무색에 그 땅투무도 세는 거 제게만도 저는 땅투도 무도 세도 또 가를 안에는 세를 안에 세데 땅투도 무도 안에 돼요. 근데 세데 땅투도 무도 세야 되고 공리 때문에 또 무슨 땅투가 소를 담보는 상말이야 무슨 땅투가 여마로와 이나 돼요 말. 존데데 나비게 되는 내가 또 존데데 있네요. 당번이네 된다고 류용도 땅통이 지어만 이나요도 지원이 좋고 아니 리베토스 질문스 아니 따라서 받는 진도에 좀 바로 제가 때 공리 되는 요구에 지래도
So, talking about giving away, and so we'll talk about the giving away in context of one's body. So when we talk about giving away one's body, the way in which we practice giving away one's body can be understood in two ways. So one is to giving away one's body, the actual body is giving away to others. And the other one is by visualizations, which is more mentally, you're preparing yourself mentally to be able to give away one's body and imagining that you are giving away your entire body or part of one's body, including one's organs and limbs and so on. So there are two ways of practicing this giving away one's body. However, when it comes to the actual practice of giving away one's body, the actual body, will be a little bit problematic for us. We as initial practitioners will not be able to do that. But in order for one to courageously engage in such a practice, one must first engage in practice of meditation, of giving and receiving. By imagining that you're actually giving away your body to whoever is needed, including your organs and limbs and so on. So this is how we begin to practice, but without perfecting one's practice, it may not be appropriate or suitable to engage in such a practice of giving away one's actual body, giving away the real body to others. But we see nowadays there are many who are actually donating their kidneys, bloods, and some part of organs to others. That's a really, really, a practice that really makes us to, to create actual causes and conditions for completing or perfecting one's practice of giving. So, so now whether we are able to give away one's body and limbs and one's organs and so forth to others, and becomes this giving as an actual practice of generosity, it entirely depends upon the mind, the mindset. So it is therefore one should always engage in the mental practice first to really to prepare oneself to become so courageous, and you will have no problem giving away everything, including one's body and so forth. So without preparing mentally and having a mindset sets, if one engages in practice of giving away one's body and so on, one may regret later, and then your practice will have no benefit at all. So it becomes no purpose. There's no purpose of engaging in that kind of practice. So therefore, it is important to familiarize with this practice by engaging in meditation and visualizations. This is how the Buddha Shakyamuni himself did. When the Buddha, as ordinary beings, as ourselves in the beginning, he was not able to do that kind of practice. It is through prolonged and persistent practice or consistent practice of generosity, he was then able to give away his entire body. That if you look at the Buddha's stories or the backgrounds that we find when Buddha at one time, when he was in the Bodhisattva's path, he even gave away his entire body to the tigers and so forth. So this is how we should, begin to learn and practice, in a very consistent manner. It's not just practice on one time and just, leaving aside, and whenever you wanted to practice, and then just pick up the practice again after, a week or so. It may not be. It will. There might be a virtues. We might accumulate some virtues or merits, but this is not a way of, developing one's spiritual practice. But this practice should be, if one wants to perfect one's practice, one should do so. One's practice must be very consistent.
지난 내내에도 기마당에다 문지마당에다 그래서데 다소송이 하리바도 제도 지난 내내에도 대령무서 단토가 지용하는 거래 로래 공리 때문에 배기 좀 그래 가히는요 지정에 대나게 짐발이야 공리 대나게 마셔야 돼 대나게 거래 대나게 와있는 다 지원들이야 대나게 유용하라 공리가 루지되는 것도 가버려 제가 다 소소 있는 데는 용도 문다니도 봐요 기마다야 봐요 차지마다야를 그래가 보고 제가 말이나 차지면 빵만으로 제가 뭐서 뭐시가 그만하려 기마지마당인데 유열이 유열이 차지당에 뭐 버려 제가 차지마다야 그래 그래가 보고 근데 이제 다들 걸려가 보이도 차지마다 걸려가 보이는 기마다 모두 들리장 걸려가 버려 얘네다 차지에 지마다 무통해 다 차바 유시로 소소로주 돌아서가 지내요 얘네 진도가 그래가 봐도 기스 진바 있네요 시간이 따와 있네요 차바던 되니 소소기 되어야 제 빈자로 보다 아니 간에로 보다 달이야 돌아서가는 것도 잘하는 거 지하마도 오늘 밖에 소소리 무색이 가르쳐 그래 나주 가보니 뭐 많이 봐 오늘 밖에 강에 용인지야 지 돌아서가는 거 잘해서 가지 제고 상상 살로 거야나 물들이 채워야 아니 제 가고 있는 것도 아제상 드네 깔리 주요를 제가 드네 인도 당하는서 가산을 리드하면 요래 제가 당하다는데 드네기 동생 하자기 시행보 여den에 저기 안으로 가서 장고를 써이나 는 동생 배야 되다 계지주 무슨 다두고 말 르다야 봐요쇼 소설 내 다되게 돌아서 지내야 제 차바다 말이 돈에 이제는 배송권이나 다두고 말 다드네도 다되게 가려서나 아니 마음받는 뉴스 제 소설을 르다 안으로 줄어서 것도 이제는 오늘 방문을 매비 돈에 다두고 주요하라 다 어디 돼야 자야들이 제가 내가 무서 마다 나를 가서 저 토마 어느 동생 배네 어느 퀄리티한 게 제시들이
So, giving away one's part of body, including one's organs, are not easy at all. There might be someone who is courageous enough to donate their part of body. I personally think this is because of their past practice, so that they have this mindset of giving out their part of their bodies and organs. It is because of their past imprints that they have that continuum, so that they become so courageous to give away their part of bodies and organs. Because if I look at myself, let alone giving away part of my body, even giving away, a couple of belongings that are not valuable, it's also hard for us. It is not easy. There's always attachment to anything that belongs to oneself, and so therefore it is not easy at all. And so therefore, to become oneself, a good practitioner of generosity, the practice of generosity, one must first engage in the practice of meditations, familiarize oneself with this practice. Because without familiarizing with practice and meditating and contemplating and meditating and giving away such, part of one's body is not easy. And because as I mentioned earlier, that I myself has never given away any human bloods and so on, let alone giving away my parts of bodies and organs. I've not even donated the blood at this point. There are many in our monastery. There are many who are donating blood, and there are quite a number of bhikshus who have actually given out their kidneys and so on to who need it for the needies. So those are not that easy for us when it comes to the giving away one's body, because if we look at ourselves, even when we give away something to somebody, mostly we give away our belongings to someone with the tinge of attachment. There's always a sudden attachment it associate with one's giving away one's practice. For instance, if you give away something, some valuable things to somebody, most of the time, to whom you are giving, the person who is receiver might be your acquaintances, probably it's your good friend, probably your relatives, and so on. But when it comes to giving away to such individual, if you really analyze very carefully, your very basic motivation is that he is my relatives, brothers, uncles, aunts, and so on and so forth. The mine is always there. And the way in which you look at mine is, like my aunt, is you're looking at that individual, the receiver, as an independent existence. And the giver myself is also as someone who has existed independently or intrinsically. And that kind of giving away is, practice of giving is not a pure practice of generosity. Rather, it is practice of giving, but tinged with attachment. So when we talk about here the giving away, the practice of generosity, we should always think about how we can detach, uh, you know, and with detachment, we should give away to things, our things to whoever is receiving uh, our positions and so on. So it is through prolonged practice, at some point, one will be able to engage in this kind of practice without any attachment. And so when we are in the initial practitioners at this point, we should think of when we're engaging in such practice, although that I'm unable to engage in this practice perfectly, I'm unable to engage in this practice of giving away my body to others. It is due to this practice, may I be able to, create a cause, perfect causes conditions, so that in the future I can give away everything that I have without any attachment. Delightfully, may I give away, may I be able to do such practice in the future. This is how we ourselves should be motivated when we engage in those practices.
tane da mo do yele ta la ju do de so le ye de ge tini ne na sa to de je tena ye so le de ge che na che to de ya ta la mo do ko to so le shira go yo ma wa cha na ne so le ye bi ne to de ta ne na sa to de so bi mo de bi mo bo jiro de ya ta de go re cha na da mo so 동생 너무 고리 때문에 그래야 소소를 공부 명예서데 뭐래 얘는 땅라와요. 저들에도 소소 준도 제체나 주죠. 가디나 무슨 땅으로 되는데 근데 제체 제체래야 아니 저저저되네 뭔가요 이제 들어와서 하다보다 전통화 생각하고 된다게 생기 뭐요. 제가 말도 제체 담배 거래 아니 대단 telaya 집에 자비제와 제대로 소리야 다 진유성 다들 쇼도에 마우도네 그래서 마 나야나 세고지야 근데 요래 제상 너무 충전이 소소直接 주주서 아니 야가 지미 못 봐줘야 소소가 요래 이제 내나 저저데 근데 제 소소 고소의 리지병 버가리마 근데 차다 나다 추세라서 봐 내가 남바다 아니 양 소차 주무에 많이 배 아니 양 샤나서거든 지대바라나 세아도 드르그 남바사도 내가 남바마 내나서서 마 되니 엔 대소데 는 소라가 비 신제로나 내가 남다 대소리야 어저와제 되고 대소라마 제요서 어떤 데서나 야야 나와있나요 하고 담보야 이제 진도가 코로나로 거든 콘텐츠에 나도 때와이나 릴라와요래.
So there are practices, that we can begin with these practices. of giving us that whatever that belongs to us, but it is not really valuable. This is because it's easier for us to engage in this practice of giving away. According to the practice of Tantra, when we engage in the practice of giving away, there's a way in which that we can even engage in the practice of giving while we are defecating. There are, according to the Tantra practice, there are many who are, longing to have smells and longing to, there are many sentient beings. They are, looking for something. They are actually, desiring for, feces and so on and so forth. There are many. So therefore, we should, everything. If one really wants to become a good practitioner, every part of the time that we have, our entire time, can be converted into practice. The practicing time, in other words. There is no such time that is left for us. Is time that we cannot. In other words, there's no such time that we cannot practice. 24 hours times, even defecating, urinating. We can do all those kind of practices instead of just blindly urinating and defecating. But if you think of all this, those are all. This is the way that we actually build up ourselves, the foundation of our practice of generosity. So, and then also even there are some other visualizations according to the Tantra practices. If one has some kind of sicknesses, imagining all the sicknesses are whatever the sickness that we may have, by visualizing all the sicknesses are, transforming into pulses and bloods and so on, and pouring from one's lower opening, and or you can imagine all the sicknesses are transforming into different forms of creatures and pouring out from the lower openings and giving away into the Lord of Yama, who is actually desiring for our life spans and lives and so forth, and imagining that you're giving away all this to others. And now, if you're able to find even one's feces and urines and all can be able to convert it into practice, then what else is left for us is something that is not something that cannot be taken as a spiritual practice. So therefore, as a practitioner, we should begin from that kind of practice, right? It's because we are not advanced practitioners, and we know that, and we are unable to actually engage in the actual practice of giving our body. It's not possible for us this time.
말도 수고를 그래야 류를 잡아라 잘했지. 아니 류주 되나야 살았지. 세제되나요. 그거봐 짐이 무바지야. 때나지 집에 가는 치마로 보다 치료를 쉬게 그래야 치마서 얘기더니 네 살았지. 되나요. 그거봐 짐이 무바지야. 지금 치마지 돌도 거요. 근데 그래야 되는 사례증을 들어봐 지금 문제 시작이나 은소소 배지 용어를 은소소가 동세대 진들 바샤지 용어를 되나지 무슨 나도 되네 참아를 저 나도 뭐 되는도와 되나 그런 나상에게요 되는 사례증에게 되나 요래 생제되나 요래 대설바 그래서 지단 대바 나시바 소소문이 대설바 아니 제요서 대설바 동요서 동세 야야제게나 고나도 저러가 더베 거래야 엔테야로 차로로 소소 파셔들라면 소소 아니 동생들이 콘트리테 어디네 지다 말아서 지금 류들이만 되는데 제 주말에 나도래 되나 얘기 따바서 좀 거래야 아니 리우 테마레 대나지 트치레 오 다소 마르트 공부시라면 도 제가 현달이야 배도 치고 연구를 근데 다소 잘했지 세제 뭐 보여요 맞아 뭐 주요 제가 동에 근데 저가 병원시 바지 소소하게 가르쳐를 배제권이라는데 어느 소소 동생 더럽이 그래 동생 바지 또 제게는 어느 소소절이야 동생들 도비 중자들 내가 동생들은 рем베리 동생들 보내 배 아니 야야 매를 받아 도매 충충이 난데 매 친구 받고 나시 맞을 로 어디 됐다 나시 뭐 동번에 내가 더해도 뭐다 라바 당투에 그 상로지 어디가 요아요 말해.
So even when one is taking shower, you can practice giving, the dirts that are actually coming out of one's body and wash away by water, imagining this to giving away to beings who actually want it. There are many beings. There are beings who would like to have our, as we mentioned earlier, the feces and urines and even pus or bloods and so on. There are many beings. If you look at, if maybe you're familiar with this text, but if you look at the text is called Siksa Samuccaya, which is the practice that's known as the practice of white umbrella. And it's you will see all these beings who needs all kinds of things. So therefore, even if there's some even wants a flame and our spits and so on. If you're spitting out, you can also practice giving away to someone. We're spitting most of it many times, right? Instead of not just blindly spitting, think about practicing and giving away. Will also become a very good practice. Will become a contributory factor for development of one's practice. This is how we practice. This is how we begin to build our practice of generosities. There are all kinds of creatures, all kinds of beings that are not known for us. There are many creatures, sentient beings, who needs all kinds of things. And so when those are our day-to-day activities, right? When we are in such situations, instead of just, carelessly spitting out, defecating and so on, thinking about that, giving away to other beings who really need it, and with kind-heartedly, in other words, cultivation of loving kindness is something that is very important. And all of those practices giving away, it's not just done on giving away so and so, but rather this must be based on cultivation of compassion and loving kindness towards all other beings. So this is how we begin to practice, and then such practice will then take us further. The practice of engaging in the practice of actual practice of generosity.
내용도 소소하게 제로제단지 엔데야 소소 메시지어이나 에는 말도 류다마이 소냐고도네 니자티리아 코페지 마제는 정말 이체는 고거여야 되지를 되는 말도다 때려 리버팅 베디토만 마도 소소이 진료 구조지만 마저 있네요. 대신에 체도 이해서 인도를 체도 이해서 소소야 라디오 들리는 말이야. 지 쇼알에 소소 된다 그러고 되네. 다저 얘기 체도 이해서 사람들이 얘기 체도 있는데 양서 거라지 전에 소소하게 된다. 지방에 도교 체도 또 내가 제거 있나요? 또 도기치도 내가 좋아하나 매달이 도기 좋아하지도 내가 제 도기 좋아하네 그냥 나도 못 좋아하지 말을 못 좋아하니 나 개와야 보고 개와야 보이는 거 사주고 세제단지 되고이 세제단지 되고라마 산주고 또 되는데 산주고 토하라 아니 제가 랑도 내 소리 해보지 장부도 아니 수바타고도 다나시게 지시를 해보고도 안테는 이거도 대답 주지 대야잔다 간다 고 가도를 내가 가르치고는 벌써는 또데 이제 세제단지 되고요 산주고 되어지다 예선다 탐도 벌써데 대다지 못 버지네 모여서니 애는 내가 가르쳐와나 내가 참아대 고모인도데 친구에서 들어가잖아요. 참아대 기획처럼 놓야게 메시지해야 되지래.
So our entire activities for body, speech, and mind can be utilized as a practice, or the Dharma practice in other words. If one should take this opportunity, we are engaging in all kinds of activities in our day-to-day life. So we should take this opportunity to make all these activities into a spiritual practice, in other words, Dharma practice. We go to work, either we work for ourselves, or we're working for others, or we are working as employee, or we're working as employer. So we are all doing something anyways. So if one is able to do this with the motivation of engaging in practice of Dharma, then all our activities of body, speech, and mind can be converted into practice of Dharma. And just as we are engaging in our activities, working and so forth, to sustain our life, it is just for making our living. But we, as unlike other beings, we are practitioners. Our making of living is not just to live ourselves, have a long life and, free of sickness or having enough food, shelter, and so forth. But rather, once the very activity of one's daily activities is just to think of that, to make myself living, but not only that, not only limited to just making a living, but rather think about it. Whatever I'm doing right now is to sustain my lifespan, and so that I will have more time to engage in practice, accumulate merits for the benefit of other sentient beings. Because without having long life and sufficient lifespan, it is not possible for us to engage in the practice and learn. Because there are a lot of dharmas that we need to learn. So it is therefore we have to have a sufficient lifespan where we can take our time and engage in practice, engage in learning Dharma. So it is with such motivations, everything that we do can be converted into practice, can become a practice of Dharma. If one is able to take this opportunity.
당어서로 저도 있잖아요. 저 소설을 뭐 싸워서 땅을 소설 돌아오고 있잖아요. 왜냐면 진님바 차트를 지래야 너무 시야야지. 바정이 예서가 뭐 싸바지만 더 있네. 골로 골이 대양치도 다 싸바던 말한 거야. 아니바 차트네. 아니 예네. 정이 예서 너무 된다지 동세지. 아니 리베리베 니바니바서 시야는 자도다. 안테네 리베리베 고리에 친구는 사바들 전토와 내가 용거래. 엔테나 얘기 다 돌아야 이제 야른다면 여러 동물이야. 지리 다 좋아. 어느 소소를 궁금해 봤어. 뭐래야. 시야는 전토는 양보여래. 소소리야. 더봐야 되는 것은 소소나리 준도 지금 궁금해 뵙자라더니 이것도 어디서든 이제 나를 봐증이제 o the legend, some tumble, quantity maker, lilla, and quantity, or lilla, quantity, and the baby of quantity, music, and music, Jimatway, Jimaba, my shed, taking is on the Jeterwa, so to lawyer than the Tolo New, and Jita, Shumangi Shadaji Tewa, Muslim Jetemata and Teshago, and the Tobayos, what the drag quantity, and they should have no quantity, that the Yaya table, the genie to up Yaya, and the Shumangus, Langajuna, Tinto, Timmy, so many, the Passe member, and then Passe member. The desert career, so that I have a ship cross, and when the ten of them are founded Bruce, and Gasoji to the day you have your.
So then also, if one can also engage in practice of giving, well, one's positions such as clothing and so on. And in the beginning, we may not be able to give away the clothes that we have, very, brand new, and something that are quite, pricey. We may not be able to give away those. But to practice ourselves, to make ourselves, to be able to give away even the valuable, belongings, we should practice as a beginners. We should practice from giving away something that is not really valuable for oneself. This is how we should begin because, such as the clothes that you have, the clothes is pretty old, and it is easy for us to give away, without having any attachment to it. Because right from the beginning, if we try to give away something that is valuable, although you may be giving away this to others at the moment, but there's some kind of attachment to it. So then your practice of giving will become, there's no purpose, there's no positive result. You may gain all of it. So therefore, we should begin from giving away something that you may have, extra, or you may no longer need it. That pretty common to all of us. Sometimes we don't even know that how many clothes that we have. And when we go through that, and some of that we have unused for many, many times. I mean, very long times. So that instead of keeping that, why don't you take this? Why don't we take this opportunity to give this away to somebody with the good intentions, so that you can build up your practice of generosity. So, so then, even if you have a very, pricey cloth that you have, you're wearing at this point, think of that. Well, at some point, I'm going to give away this to somebody. This is how we should think, so that this will, build become a habituation. It will be, you'll be able to, there will be your mind will be habituated with thinking of giving away that you're belonging to someone. And even if you have something that is some kind of belongings that are quite expensive, but at this point that you are unable to give away, but think of that. At some point, I definitely give this away to somebody. I'm not going to give this to me my entire life, but I'm going to give away to somebody. So this is how we train ourselves mentally to train ourselves in engaging the practice of generosity. Because when we think of a practice of generosity, it's just simply not that you're able to give away something to somebody. It's not actually a practice of generosity in accordance to Dharma. In accordance to Dharma, the practice of generosity has a very profound meaning. It should be, based on, devoid of attachment. It should be accompanied by compassionate motivations, and then this should be dedicated towards one's own state of enlightenment or that of the enlightenment of other beings. And those are all needed to make one's practice of generosity perfect practice of generosity.
전에 당도 마다이네 다 소소래 요대 요당 로주 계산서데 첸들 담아도 있네 다 되면 담아도 지금 말한 시점이 지려야 되네 대지한 당이에서 다 마다야 되네 제대로 해야 보여래 그렇죠 아니 단단 첸들 소소를 그런 거에 제대로 진 담아도 있네 당아 시비 지려야 하는 소소를 요대 소소 사실을 요노 죄다 거기서 그래서 내시에는 저기 예서 시야 땅에 예서 되게 맞아야 되게 생각으로 양권에 여보요래.
So then also, it is also a good way to practice that even though everything that I have right now, I may not be even able to give away to others, but when it is, I will make sure that when I pass away from this life, I'll make sure that whatever that I have right now that can be given to others will become a good use for others. So this is also one way of building one's practice of generosity.
자가나야 반자도 지난 지바 뭐보다 어떤 데는 지신도 지가르나 추지바 당을 보서 주 야가 자체 그래더니 뭐라나 것도 말이야 주사 안에 그가 쇼주되는 저기제 안에 봐서 당을 살이야 거기서 뒤지지래 추지바 당을 그래서 더 기발에 노동시라 명에 니바 로에네 어찌단다고 리나 보서 되는이야 권리되네
So one thing that we can, follow the examples of the Sikh religion or the Sikhism, so we find that in a lot of followers of the Sikh religions, they are very fond of engaging in practice of generosity, giving out even a bottle of water. If they find someone needed, they will give away to others. They are, in fact, in India, at sometime when we are nearby the Sikh temple, and you will find a lot of people who are on the street giving away clean water, because in India nowadays we get all this good water, but those days it's not easy to get a clean bottled water. But then those the followers of the Sikh religions, they are always being in the street distributing the bottled water to everyone who need it. And this is how we build our practice. This is how we learn how to engage in this practice.
대나이 별이네요. 리담보 저기 진발 고리 대학교도 답변 잠바벽으로 잠바나네 출로 근데 빠들 강부 시시드나 하고 캠라 많이 받는 초도로니 시시에서 드니 야가도 버저가 희나절이야 뭐 trouble 총치고 드는 자그래 어디에 있어서 캐네 단을 잠바 빠들은 지금 어디나 당이 뭐 뭐요.
And there are also some practitioners in Tibet. In Tibet, there's a very high altitudes. You may not find much insects nearby, but they just go to the forest and bushes where there are more like ants and some insects. They always take the tsampa, mix with the water, and they disperse tsampa everywhere in the bushes so that the insects or the can eat those sambas. So this is how we should begin our practice of generosity. From the very beginners, we should take as a one step at a time.
아니요, 가시 마시면 예매관 터지네. 소시에 비지래 지 못한 드네서서 나래 지역에 옛날에 변동을 옛날에 지역이 있었더니 대비증 뭐도 어떤 하는 거라다.
So then we also find everywhere now many people who would like to donate their own organs, and they are ready to give away, and they have a will of giving away their organs to someone when they pass away. So those are a really, really good practice.
tene yang so shen ya ji ba ge lue jing ge na da long ju jing ge na ge de jing ge na dang bo so so ga wo ni bo so jin la do a so so ge pa ma yin na da so so pi je yin na da ni di yin na da te so jin la do a cha da ji na ji ba de cha ba da ma de wa ju go de yin na yang ma lo so dang bo ni cha ba de wa de yong ka mo re cha de so so dong se de ko ni pe ya che do je dong bo so so pu li jin na de wo re tene pa ma da ni de de da ga jin ane ribe 동세에 관에 본다 배워도 저기도 ane 차바대야 차세다 많이 배 이게 쓰러질 가지고 뭔가 있는 진도야 도서 유한기 배서 제거해도
So in the beginning, although when we're giving our belongings to our relatives, friends, and so on, that is sort of kinship attachment, but nevertheless, if one's purpose of giving away is to really to become a good practitioner of generosity, it will implant as seeds of practice of generosity in the future.
내내도 다가다 너도는 말아서 소소 저리야 동세 야보지 뭐다 깔아서 사람들이 자주 쓰면서 저기 아니 뭐다 깔아서 더 가기 쪽인도 안도 되게 니바 용하나 근데 당보 제일 당보로 라마슈네 가니 도서 버리되는 용거 예도다 말아서 가다 나를 얘네 가서 저기 당보 중자니 도서 버리되 와이나 소소를 강해내 봐 야와요 당보니 여기 친구지 상하나 대라서 용마도 제인데 당체니까 요 제상 어떤 중자니 야 도서 나지기나 근데 보여요 제가
So in brief, that as a practitioner, because the practice of generosity is the first practice out of 6 perfections, the practice of 6 perfections. So therefore, one should always think that, although at this time I'm not capable of engaging in this practice of giving away everything that I have, including my body and so on, but nevertheless, in the future, I will follow the footsteps of the great bodhisattvas who are able to give away everything delightfully. May I be able to become the practitioner like those of bodhisattvas. And whatever the practice of generosity that one may have practiced, such as giving away, not, invaluable, things to others. One should take this opportunity to dedicate one's merits, so that by dedicating such practice, will become a very strong imprint or the propensities to germinate the sprout of actual practice of generosity.
제가 형도 선호지 들어보고 다 내가 이제는 지난해 소설에 배도스게 연합에 나서 때 바로 파져 되지 배우에는 소설의 시작 배도 연합에 나서 근데 또 외우고 와 제가 무슨 진바탕에서 뭐 어디 파져 되냐 시간 팬들에서 이제 통도 돼 되는 소설 팬들 제가 소설 주역에다 다 진바탕도 소 ranjole tongsen ya kone peo de kore ranjoge ene sena de ma nyang ro yo ro che dang ma ro jole yode ga da yode ga sena de ene me ba so sena de yo chi de sena wang ge ene ndo cha do de ma bo chi de yo go de yo wang ge cha jung ge ma bo za yo go ro zamling na da 지 주제제 쨀대什么的 세나만 배운 거예요. 네, 이게 제마도 이제 말하기 위해서 시행 쇼비거든요. 세나 쇼. 근데 여기 처음에 받아 세나만게 근데 쨀네. 그러나 정말 많은 날 거세요. 왜 시행하고 또 근데 라고 제가 자자 도세 kodu chediya so sena da ni go jesa dede sena de mena ane that korto ni apor ngal go me slagro jesa ngal go sel kol ngal mo kol to sede kombodo so sena oke yonde gore chom hi ba oke yonde gore 저 된다리 sen tema radio me chaso ina ane rani joreya karse gore ene pela chuchayo gore kondo ma yito yo maro kondo ma yito me wa ina de mo ge leng ma sa maro leng ma masana de individu dunge de so gore yo go maro chaza de no inde sele jimba tawa ina 계산 더 라니를 또 요래 등으로요 시고도
So this practice of generosity is, although at the moment that we think that we're giving away something to somebody, it's solely to benefit others. It is benefiting others. And as if that we are not receiving any benefit out of that. We might think in that way. It happens, and sometimes people ask us questions. It is, however, it's not so. You are helping others, and that's benefiting others. By helping others, you will receive the ultimate result. The actual beneficial result that you receive is inconceivable. Because by engaging in practice of giving away something to someone, in other words, practice of generosity, and benefiting others, by doing such practice, by engaging in such practice, what it does is it actually decreases the intensity of our miserliness and uncontented state of mind. You'll become more contented. Once you become a contented, then that is the time that you actually enjoy happiness. Because contented mind leads to all kind of, bring forth all kind of negative thoughts and emotions, such as attachment, anger, jealousy, sense of competitiveness, and so on. And following this motivations, we have actions of the body and speech that creates a negative karma. And we ourselves is the one who experienced this negative karma accumulated due to the actions of the body, speech, negative actions of the body, speech, and mind. So therefore, if one is able to engage in the practice of generosity without any attachment, without any sense of miserliness, one is able to reduce, as we talked earlier, the contented mind will then reduce our negative thoughts. Because this uncontented mind bring forth all these negative thoughts and emotions. It is true because if you look at ourselves, we need that, and we do have things that we are enough, but because of this uncontented mind, they force us to get more and more, so that it eventually make us, eventually force us to engage in activities that are negative. So if one is able to cultivate contented mind, the mind is so contented, then this will eventually, diminish our sense of miserliness. And with this, by diminishing this miserliness, then one will not be able to remain under the power of attachment, jealousy, sense of competitiveness, and so on, which then one will not engage in all those negative actions, derived from those negative thoughts and emotions. So then one will not, go through the experiencing of negative karma.
그래서 때문에도 때문에 좀 된데 라발라진네 가서 어느 류에 다마를 좀 알아서 봐. 내가 나래지네 다 아니 그런 것도 사지 바로 저한테 지바당 뭐 담에 담아다 계산하는 소설을 둬야 되는 지래.
So if you look at the Buddha Shakyamuni's story, while he was on the path of learning, he engaged in all sort of practice of generosity, and particularly the well-known practice of generosity is giving away his body to other animals and so forth. So therefore, it is through the practice of perfection of the practice of generosity will really, clear complete enlightenment.
하고도 좋아요.
Take some questions. Any questions?
So, going to the stories of Buddha, where Buddha cuts his flesh to feed the baby tigers.
Mhm.
So that's the first time I heard of
Yes,
this.
yes.
And now we have this teaching. And we use the term generosity, okay? And, because there was no anesthesia or whatever, it's symbolic, I would say, when it was written, okay? So my question is, generosity seems to have an attachment because you are being generous. And I would like to ask the question, if you were truly seeking enlightenment, wouldn't generosity turn into the right thing to do? And you wouldn't have to be generous or selfish. It would just be the right thing to do. Is there a paradigm shift to where you quit looking at things the right and wrong way, or generous or selfish, and look at it as the right thing to do, and that's it? Do you understand?
Is this question?
Yeah, the question.
I didn't get it.
One thing,
Did you guys understand it?
I did.
I think I know what he's saying.
The question is, I'm trying to understand.
Curious, yeah. Can you please, yeah.
Oh, I gotta put
Yeah,
my
it's hard to
glasses
put it in a question, so it's like a statement or question, I don't know.
Is generosity
Yeah, it's generosity.
the wrong word in English?
Mhm.
Because if you're trying to become enlightened, it wouldn't be a matter of generosity, it would be a matter of the right thing to do, period. There would be no discussion. It wouldn't be generous, it would be the right thing to do.
Does that imply conditions though?
No,
So
that's what,
is what you're saying, wouldn't you get to the point where there was no attachment, you were doing it not out of attachment, just simply because it's right to do it?
right,
No attachment, but it's right to do, and so you
Yeah.
do that.
because to have generosity, you still have to have attachment.
Do you get it?
You mean that if you become a generosity, you necessarily become attachment? Yeah,
To have generosity.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
I'll just ask this one, I got it.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. Okay,
Group thing, okay? So, sorry,
that's no problem, it's okay.
you smiling. Yeah.
Like it, sometimes that's your wa. Like it, sometimes that's it. Jimbe, Jimbe, because nature figures it all here. Coincidence, Korea, Chawa Trade, Kuga. Also, Jimbe said it all here. Go near Yambachi figure. The Chikanda Jida Jimbe, Negalia, go Delia, Chabo Madeira, you must see sort of. Conducting near figures actually, your was catching imaginary. The whole direction, Zora Tararesha. 그 지난데 상계 사회는 상계 사회는 그 집에 냠냠 가라 간을 제자베네 그 파조로 외신 참바시 그러 왔어. 근데 사마게 내가 그 짐바지 그래서 다시하면은 그 차저는 메들 짐바지 이런 거. 사마게 내가 그래도 왔다 간다. 엔데스도.
잡아도 말이지 봐. 아유, 잡아야 돼. 봐요. 꼭 봐요. 저당 가르쳐 그래. 나중에 말하면서 내가 차 나를 당세야지 문제도 여들어와. 좋아. 대리 잡아대 야보 말해서 그러고 또 빵자에서 그러고. 세제 탐지라 네 마이 붙이버려 때와 나시기 잡아야지 돈은 되고 그래. 어디로 되고 그래다. 세제 탐지래야 아마지를 붙이거나 아마데 붙들라 따당 주러 와. 근데 따당데 세제 탐지를 처리해 봤지. 다 도와주고 그래. 나는 잡아만 봐야 돼. 됐나 이게 모두 지만 나를 집에 가래. 소소나 주 소소리야 디와 메케 그래. 나 주트 디와 메데케. 소소리야 주 로봇제 담아지 되는 디와 메데케. 내가 들으는 춘이 배지바 마에게 뭐지바 마에게 들래 지바 땅 카와요. 좋아. 제가 내 가르쳐는 뭐서 추 말이야. 잡아야 돼. 내가 잡다 당세야. 방제서 주비 잡아지도 와. 어떤 말이 가지고 말해봐도 세제 탐지라 안에 마이 배지바라 잡아나기데 연하든 되고 그래. 지난 이제는 잡아서 미다가 되나 요걸 때 잡아대 가르쳐 그래. 나중에 와서 내 자세 방제서 주면 잡아주러 와. 때 말해. 니제에 세제 탐지라 세제 문바서 넘버 두면 되는데 또 싶어요. 왔다 돼. 좋아. 처음에 있다 그래. 배나 라말 대바주러 와. 좋아. 대바대 잡아든 대바주요래 잡아든 말이 대바주러 와. 어떤 게 이거 저 제가 버리지들 해.
짐베들이 잡아도 말이 짐베들 간에 시작했어.
잡아든 말이 짐바싱인데 처리해 봤지.
그래서
좋아. 처리해 봤지. 간단하고 그래서.
So here now, when we talk about attachment, we have an attachment towards someone who is close to oneself, and aversion towards someone whom we dislike. This is our attitude. We have this attitude with us, and then we ignore the neutral people. And those are the three attitudes that we are equipped with uncontrollably. Attachment towards one's loved ones, someone who is close to oneself, someone who, and aversion towards someone whom you dislike. And we're kind of not being careless of someone who is neutral to us. This is our ordinary human being's attitude that we have. But when it comes to the practice of generosity, we should be free of that. We should be free of that. And in other words, I'll give this to this person, I'm not going to give to this person. And this kind of biased view shouldn't be there.
So it should be universal.
Yeah, it should be universal. But if you have something that is, even if you have one thing that you are giving out to someone, but you do not have enough to give out to somebody, but you shouldn't have this. I'm giving to this person, I'm not going to give to this person. You shouldn't have this kind of motivation.
Right.
And just giving out, you should be sorry for that other person, but of course you're giving one thing that you, for instance, you just you have $1 left in your hand.
Right.
That somebody needed, and you are giving this to the person, and then you see somebody is next to you and wanted $1 too.
Mhm.
But then you already gave it to someone, but that's not that you're actually having you are being a bias, but you do not have it. But that you're giving to somebody, you give this person, you give away this person out of good motivations without having any discriminations. But you have no choice but to say sorry to the other person, but we don't have it.
Right.
But at the same time, you shouldn't have a biased view, you know?
I
I
wouldn't
won't give it
you,
to you, for instance.
but I don't have it.
Yeah,
So I'm sorry I gave away what I
Yeah.
could without attachment, so you actually,
Yeah.
you have no attachment to not giving. So it's universal.
Yeah,
You-
that's
It's the right thing to do both ways, because you have the right, your intent, bodhicitta is right to say you're sorry or to give it.
so this is how we, how we practice our generosity. Because, it's very important for us, when we talk about giving something to somebody, we have a tendency of looking at other person as a inferior. This shouldn't be there at all.
Right.
If you have this, then this is not a good practice of generosity. It is completely boosted by one's vanity and motivated by powers and so on. So therefore, when one is giving to somebody, it's a very careful as a practitioner. We're giving it to wholeheartedly with a feeling of compassion and
Could it be
with
sharing,
kind-heartedness.
sharing equally, like interconnectedness.
Mhm.
So you're celebrating, by sharing, you're celebrating the interconnectedness.
Okay, so I'll ask you about that.
What?
Sharing with interconnected species.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to the spiritual part of generosity,
Yeah.
again, it's not generous, it's the right thing to do because everybody's interconnected. So if you celebrate that, you'll have the best life.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay.
So it's like, it's like, you don't want to be selfish to do the right thing. The point I guess I'm getting to is sometimes people do the right thing very selfishly, like, oh, I'm such a good person. And I think that intent destroys the actual generosity. Because it has I'm not doing it.
Yeah,
because
this means that you already have attachment to it.
Right,
That's what we should be, that's the main point here.
right.
When we're doing this, I'm doing this by looking at somebody as inferior than oneself. It's completely wrong. Because when you do that, when you talk about engaging in practice of generosity, must be selfless act.
Selfless.
Selfless act.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
If it's a selfish motivation, selfish motive is there
Right.
involved, then your practice will not become generous at
So
all.
no matter
It's
what
no matter
action
what
it
action
is, it doesn't
No.
get any merit.
Not at all.
Right, okay. Good, thank you.
다 그걸 빼지거든요. 빼나 저런 공원 자유하지. 그런 공원 자유하지. 대 소소체도 많이 봐. 얘는 폐쇄군이한테 얘를 당해 봐지. 저런 문이도 무서워하지. 아주 거기에 봐지. 저런이야 안에 예나랑을 레스 생각이 저런 요양해 줘야 하지. 파종문에만 되게 소소 먹어야지. 커피는 보면 있는 근데 이게 소소문을 못 하지. 아주 거기에 봐지. 소소를 지금 고모지 테러라고도 설랑에 레스 생각이 줄어는 나중에 되어 여기 뭐지 계주지 말해야지. 렌징을 줘야지. 근데 저런 고모마지 테러지 렌지 레스 왔는데 소소 되어 여기도 저 레테오데 저런 세야야. 배 가도 되면도 안에 바 고모 막 퇴장제 줘서네. 저런 동세지 내가 왔어. 근데 동세지 저거도 많이 봐지래서.
미국도
목도 말씀이 더 말하고.
이 챔버지 나를
그게 공부 못 하지.
근데 지금 당에 고나로 당에
지금 땅에 공부 지금 땅에 공부 자주 하지.
공부하고
지금 땅에
지금
땅에 그 준세대 그런 치도 많이 받지. 시야를 배서 끊는 거 많이 받지. 소도 그 땅에서 치도야. 지금 땅에 여러 와. 근데 많이 소도 치도 많이 봐. 이해를 배서 끊는 거 많이 받지. 다 랑이 되게 고마말랑이 백가래야 거기에 구하네요. 포도 뭐하게 잡아 용으로 와. 그래서 랑에 되게 현다주 주니에 랭고야지. 랑에 그런 게 먹고 하지. 나 그걸 보고 있는 그런 보고 지금 그걸 내 보고 랭고야 주로. 어떤지 소소가 아주 놀래. 안 봐라. 매현다 지금 고모제제 고모마제 랑에 레서 뭐들서 뭐 소소 세네 앞에 가서를 되는 데이터 제시어 세주 말해. 어떤지 지금까지 근데 잡아도 말이가 배드네 샤는데.
소소에 그도 패션 가려.
네.
작업견 말이고.
아,
소소에 많이 작업견 말이고 소소를 하는 거.
나한테 빼. 다 빼드네 샤는 잡아 제사 그 말아. 그좀 통해 말해. 단 투이 말해. 다 걸 잡아 가르쳐. 나는 잡아 제사 말아.
작업견 레지면 이제 그래서 원시 비슷한 거.
그 말때 광이 잡아 제거야. 다 걸 빼드네 그거보다. 맞아. 얘 뭐 통해 잡아 제거. 근데 내가 그런 이만 당했지.
집에 다니고
그런 게 통하지. 뭐 어디 가라 봐줬다. 나는 지금 그 통하라. 왜 뭐 있는 거 하고 말아. 자, 되지지. 다 그런 거 이만 당해도 그런 식으로 많이 봐. 얘는 배봐 그 있는 한테 이 맞지. 다 그런 아주 고고해 맞지.
난 지야게
아주 고고해 맞지.
우리 가서 숨지 교회지.
그런 아주 고고해 맞지. 다랑에 대 고치.
근데
나는 내 뭐게 바라지.
미숨도 와대.
무슨 거다. 근데 얘는 내가 그 랑에 대 수입에다 준 것으로 해만 하고 세네 랑에 레서 가서 네.
되게
대표잖아. 배 된다고 하지만 타지는 좀 벌써 그 말다. 배 된다고 하지.
example of this I was keep asking questions to get back and forth because I didn't get it in the beginning. So, for instance, let's say example of this guy's example that he has made in his mind is that, for instance, the giver who's blind, who cannot see, the visually impaired person, and the giver actually hears something that somebody wanted. For instance, like $100,
Right.
let's say. And the giver cannot see the person, and given do not know the person. But the person who wanted the $100 is not directly asking you, but he asks, for instance, Karen, can you ask Michael to give me $100? So, for instance, I'll take myself as example, who wanted $100. I say $100, but Michael has $100. But I'm not asking you directly, but I'm asking Karen, can you ask,
Right. Sure.
Michael to give me $100?
Okay.
You can't see me, you don't know me at all.
Okay.
In fact, it's as if you are visually,
Right.
So now you are wholeheartedly, regardless of who asks that person,
Right.
who you don't even know that person. You only, the message is passed to the other person, the third person is involved.
Right.
And she is telling you, and you are not giving to her, but you are giving to me, that you're wholeheartedly, your motivation is solely to benefit me, and that whoever is asking, and you have no attachment to it at all.
Right.
You have no sense of, superiority or inferiority.
Right.
There's nothing is involved in that. It's so pure that you don't even know, but you don't even see that person. But you know that person needs something.
Right.
And your mind is completely moved by, compassion that you really need that person, really need it, so $100, so desperately need it. Okay, I'll give it to you. So you're giving $100 to Karen, and Karen's going to give it to me.
Right.
This is one kind of example that Krista is setting. It's something that you're giving away to someone without any attachment.
So, okay, but we're using a monetary, which has a very symbolic thing, okay? And how spiritually, I I think the value is not yours. It's not your $100. It's your belief in Dharma. So by sharing your belief in Dharma without generosity, sorry, I went from a monetary to
No,
a,
go ahead, yeah.
you know,
I'm getting
what
it.
I'm saying is, so like you share it
Mhm.
and you have no attachment to it because you want the interconnected, you want to celebrate the interconnectedness and the fact that we're all the same and we're all one, and we're symbolically manipulating that energy or that truth through these lessons.
Pretty complicated.
Well, no, yeah, but Tibetan is, sorry, it's such a step on language and the translation of it. I found, just like last week where they had the good and the bad, you know, that we have a great translator here, and I have these questions, not like how do you release, like, isn't there a point where generosity and good and evil and all that goes away because you just do the right thing? You know, you're like a, you know, like you don't have to think about it. It's just the right thing.
You're helping someone that's suffering.
Or whatever the answer is. You know, like in the old days, my grandmother would say, well, Michael, it's in your heart. You say a prayer and then you follow your prayer.
So
Okay.
what I'm missing here
I know.
Right.
is, you know, what is the relationship between this and giving with attachment? I'm not sure that I understand.
Well, I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a good question, though, but it's not, it's hard to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand to your question directly.
Yes.
Okay. To your question directly, the ego is something that we're supposed to get rid of, correct? So it's non-essential to the human being.
What's not essential to the human being is attachment to a self. That doesn't exist. That's what's non-essential.
Okay.
But I'm not understanding, you know, where, you know, what you're thinking should go away, and what, you know, and how that relates to
To the
giving with attachment or without attachment. I'm not understanding that.
I think this has to do a lot with my thoughts about Shantideva and the introduction to this compendium, okay? And I'm saying, at a certain point, aren't we allowed to be to the next step? Do we get to evolve towards enlightenment? Like, isn't enlightenment just the acceptance of truth?
Isn't enlightenment just the acceptance of truth?
Yeah. I mean, at the point where you see truth and you drop all your intellectual filters that stop you from seeing the truth, isn't that, I'm sorry.
That's okay, that's good.
No, I mean, like in Buddhism.
No problem. This is a good exercise.
No,
You should
so,
have a
I guess you're allowed.
sorry, like, okay, so
Good as a card, yeah.
you have people that are they have eyes that you don't know how they see. Like Gokar. Or Genla. You know, how does Genla see? You know, Genla is very, up here, very different from anybody I know.
Okay.
So anyway, I'll getting back to the attachment thing. Isn't there a point where all of this argument, if you have good and bad in you and you have this struggle, the terminal struggle, if at the point where you give away that struggle and you just do what is right, is that enlightenment or is that just a successful human being?
I just have a question though. If you do something, sorry, I hope you enjoy this discussion group.
What?
I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
if you're doing something because it's right, then you're implying that there's a right and a wrong. And so I would ask, do you think that the Buddha does something because it's right, opposed to wrong, or does the Buddha do it because genuinely wants to help others?
Yeah, you identify with the individual suffering.
I just hear a lot of doing it because it's right, because it's right, because it's right, but we think a lot of things that are right, but I don't think that's the intention of the generosity. It seems to be, it's more
Okay,
because you
so
want to benefit.
I think we're agreeing because when people say generous, they have, that they could be, what's the opposite, selfish or stingy? Well, if you're saying, oh, I'm generous, then you're saying, oh, I could be this.
Cheap.
So at the point where you're saying, oh, I think I'm generous, I'm gonna do this, you're attached to the fact that you could do other things.
You're attached, I'm not sure I follow that. I don't follow that at all.
I don't think there's a lot of thought process.
What?
I think the Buddha just does it.
Right,
I don't think that
Like,
it's
you
done
need to-
because it's right or it's wrong. The Buddha just does it.
And that's what I'm trying to
That's
say.
what Buddha does everything that Buddha does. Alleviate
Okay, I
suffering.
would like to ask a question about value.
Go ahead.
Buddha does everything that the Buddha does to alleviate suffering and to lead others to enlightenment. That's
I
what the
kinda-
Buddha does. Okay, it's not because there's some moral right or wrong.
Right, I
It's
agree.
because Buddha wants to alleviate your suffering and have you be enlightened. So, I'm not
I'm wondering what the real, I think that what I'm trying to understand is there's words that confuse me because in the teachings, they're very specific, and we're getting a word generosity in this teaching, and I'm trying to dissect what it says in the Tibetan book, what it says in Tibet, because the translation of English to Tibetan is very hard. English, to me, is a mathematical and scientific language. Tibetan is a very philosophical and ethical language. They're like two different keys of a piano. So I'm just trying to understand the words that have tripped me up in these questions. I don't mean to take you guys down the rabbit hole.
No, that's okay. I'm just trying to understand what it is that you're asking. I'm not sure.
The thing is that I'm coming to, and I've tried to say this several times, is at a certain point, you have to trust that you know what is right and wrong, and you, as to your point, not Buddha or, I know, not even close, okay? But I believe that you have an inherent spirituality that if you go against, you know you're doing wrong. At least I do. I know when I'm lying. I know when I'm shyster. I know when I'm not doing my best. Okay? And so I'm saying, not in self-judgment or anything, but at the point where I don't have those feelings, I would be doing the right thing just because it's the right thing. Not because I'm seeking enlightenment or a praise or a higher.
I see. So generosity without any drive to be enlightened.
It's no, because I think if you understood that point, that would be an enlightened point. So to think about it in generosity is a stumbling block, because emotionally you're setting yourself up for an excuse to fail. Because, oh, I'm not generous enough.
Oh, I see. Is it possible to really truly be generous if you can judge yourself as not having done it right?
I think there's universal laws.
Or you're not enlightened if you can be attached to the idea that you were generous, or those kinds of things. And so that as long as there's either something that says, I'm generous or I'm not, or is attached to being generous or not,
Right.
or
Gabriel.
who has to pass judgment on something logically before they do it. Is that it?
I think that.
I don't know.
No. I think
Sorry,
that, yes, I think that what you're saying is, I think that there's a universal knowledge, energy, love, whatever you want to call it, And if you look at the core of the great teachings, they all drink from that same fountain of compassion, love, one, very similar. And if you look at if you look at the stories of Buddha, and then you say how many 600 years later, Christ shows up, and you look at the comparisons between the parables of Jesus and the stories of Buddha, you see a very similar path. And it's like an evolution, so the Europeans can't be Buddhists, so they became Christians. But the energy there is a universal love. And that's what I'm saying, as long as we think of generosity, we have that choice to be generous. And I think that there should be a step, hopefully, that we can evolve to, that it wouldn't be that step, you would just do it.
You would do it without thinking about it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Sorry, you do it because it's, yeah. Sorry.
You do it without thinking about it, and it's the thing that needs to be done, and you don't have to think about it.
Well, I think if you would have the right practice, I mean, the way I was kind of taught, if you take the right steps, then if you take positive steps, then you have more positive paths. So the more positive steps you have, it kind of narrows down these positive paths to finally you're walking a rail because your one step leads to the next step. And it's I don't know. Yeah, anyway, sorry. The attachment and generosity and some of these words that come across in English in different teachings seem to be saying different things, but they're using the same English word. And so I'm trying to, as we go into the anthology, I mean, we're still in the introduction. Wait till you get into some of the interior stuff. And that's where I want to know what language to use, that's all. So sorry. Thank you for
Okay, well, I'm trying to understand in English what you're saying in English.
Well, Ken.
It's
That's why you can give so many references. That's why the author of the anthology gives so many references to different interpretations of it or commentaries of it.
Right.
So the thing is I don't understand a lot of them yet.
Anyway, sorry.
No problem.
Rabbit call. I didn't get out of the rabbit
Anytime,
hole.
it's good to
But I
have.
get better language.
I do, but it's really not related.
No, go ahead. I'm way down.
I was thinking, my mind is getting messed with. Now I'm gonna ask a question that will mess with everyone else.
Okay, good.
Look forward to it.
You want it? You don't even have to, don't worry.
Yeah, I think I probably need to leave because I have another translation.
It's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I should have answered. I think you would tell me now.
We'll save it for next week.
No, I need to know by Monday.
Oh. Quick, say it. Quick.
No, he has to go. He has to.
No, it's
So
fine.
let's
Okay.
kind of.
I have another
It's
translation.
totally
sorry,
fine.
sorry.
It's fine.
At 9 o'clock, I have a translation.
So beginning on page 23 and 24, and continuing with auspicious wishes on page 20.
Sorry.
Thank you all. Thank you, everyone. Nagi
Kowe Shinkansu Pedan Dewa Malu Juwen, Chere Zewa Denze Jasoye, Shabe Sede Pardo Temyo Chi. Chedara Jimba Dan Godo Zambo Teyande, Tada Guji Jizo Daloji, Yawa Dada Danji Rado, Teson Jibi Yawa Danji, Mawa Kanla Chodo Mabane, Dagi Kiwe Zawa Neguja, Sambo Juji Rado Moraji. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry about. No, it's like the language. The language is so different.